Welcome to Ion Franchising.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising. I'm your host, Lance Graulich. Well, I have a very old friend. He's not that old, okay? So don't be thinking he's too old. Amazing friend, and he and I worked together way back when. I'm actually a master graduate of Rapport Leadership International. Might come up in the discussion. What the heck is rapport leadership? So Altium Leadership is his company. He's the president and CEO. He is the team performance authority. Boy, this guy can teach anybody about anything regarding people and performance. My buddy, Spencer Horn. Welcome to the show, Spencer.
Lance, so good to be with you. Thank you for having me. It's great to see you again. And yeah, it's been a few years, and I'm so excited to be back with you.
Well,
and really be talking to franchisees and franchisors.
Yep. I love it. Spencer, you are such a big time speaker these days. I mean, when I was tracking you down recently, I mean, how many countries have you been to in the last few years speaking, working?
A lot. We just got back from Indonesia a couple of weeks ago, and Canada the week before that. I'll be back in Canada here in a couple of weeks. Cyprus, Greece, Lebanon, Poland.
I love it.
Brazil, we're booking here pretty shortly. Yeah, so I love to travel.
I love it. Well, let's start there. When you go to get booked to speak, what is the top issue, concern, problem that companies want you to address?
My goodness, that there's so many, and
so many problems.
Yeah, there are so many. A lot of times when I'm speaking to associations or organizations, they want me to come in and speak to the leadership of different types of organizations. So whether it be, for example, association of franchisors, how do we create greater engagement with our membership right now? And the same with businesses, how do we keep our employees engaged? One of the things that I've noticed, Lance, when you're starting a business, there's so much energy in the beginning, right? You get a franchise, you open a business, and you bring in all the employees, and everybody's excited for the start. But then you've got to operate long-term. How do you keep that momentum going?
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's about how do you create results in your organization, whether that be a nonprofit, association, a business, a government agency. It's about getting the best out of your people sustainably. Anybody can do it for a short period of time, but how do you sustain that productivity year after year after year? And that's one of the biggest challenges that I see.
And so what is the biggest secret that you share with people about that? If there's one tip on creating those great results year over year, what is that tip? What are most people missing?
It's you. It's you as the leader in your organization. You have the biggest impact on the culture of your organization. And there is, so often we think of these things as, soft skills. Well, here's a hard number for you. 1/3 of all financial results, and this is based on research, 1/3 of all financial results comes from the culture of the business. And that is all about relationships. That's all about your leadership as a leader within your organization. It is about getting the best out of people. That's the one thing. And that starts at the top.
Love it. Well, we dove right into some good meat here, this great subject. How did you get into this? We met, I mentioned, at Rapport Leadership. Talk a little bit about Spencer and what is your fascination, your passion? How did you become the Spencer Horn when it comes to team authority, performance, people skills, all of this? How did this happen?
A lot of life is serendipity, as you know, and just like where you are today, and so many threads, brought me here to where I am, and you where you are. I've been in business for 31 years. I've been an executive after graduating with a master's degree from the University of Utah in economics. I started working for a publicly traded company. By 27, I was a vice president of a publicly traded company. And I had an incredible mentor, Kelvin Cullimore, a friend of mine to this day in his early 90s, just such an incredible leader. So I had some great leadership experience, and then I've had opportunities to be, an entrepreneur who has had failed businesses, have gotten in my own way, have created challenges for my own business, and I wanted to be able to understand how I could be more effective, taking all the experience I had, both the positive and the failures, and help myself grow a business. Well, just by accident, I was living in Las Vegas. I came to run a business there, did that for a time, and I was introduced to this company, Rapport Leadership, in 2008. And it was January of 2008. I started working in March of 2008. If you recall what happened in 2008, it's probably the worst time of ever possible to start working for a leadership training company, because that's the number one thing that companies cut. Any extraneous expenses, but they would stop with that. And they hired me to do organizational development training. That was initially what they hired me for. But because their sales were cut in half overnight, first of all, it wasn't a great time to find another job. And so starting in January of 2009, I was on 100% commission, Lance, at Rapport.
Yeah.
And you know the story of how they sell. It's mostly referral based. I didn't have any book of business, so I had really no way of generating leads with their traditional method of creating business, and I had to feed my family. And so one of the things I started doing was speaking, and the purpose of speaking was to be able to generate leads. It's such a great way for people to market ideas and their business, whether it be a franchise. When you get up in front of an audience and you can speak with credibility, and they feel that you're not selling them or pitching them, people become very, very interested.
Yeah.
And so that really launched my speaking career.
Love it. Yeah. No, I mean, look, it's powerful. I've seen you all over the place. You have such a huge presence on LinkedIn. So let's get into the meat of this. We were talking, what are the three components or three things that every business needs? And
you need a lot of things, but if you're to just break it down to the very, very basics,
yes,
you got to have capital. You got to have capital. You got to have a great product, and you got to have a market. In other words, people that want what you have. Some people have a great idea and they're like, hey, I want to sell this widget, and there's no market for it.
Yeah.
So you got to have something that people want. And that's one of the benefits of having a franchise, right? If you find a brand that is already in great demand, that there's a market. Really, then you've got to bring your capital, your contacts, your hard work and labor, and you can make that work. When I started my business, I had two of the three. I had a product that I felt like people needed, which was how to help them improve their team performance, get the best out of their people, had great solutions for that. And I had people that knew me and would reach out to me. I didn't have any capital. And some people start their business with very little capital, and there's some creative ways you can get started. But you have to make up for that deficit some way. And that's human capital, as you and I were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
But if you have all three, that gives you a great head start, because if you have some capital, it can make up for some mistakes that you make as a business leader, right?
Yes, absolutely. So in the human capital department, so many people are having challenges today. So share some of the biggest tips that you're sharing on stages and in intimate trainings, if you will, with huge organizations that are paying you a lot of money. What are some of those secrets to
I talk about impact. I ask my audiences, how many of you have good intentions? Everybody raises their hand. And then I ask, how many of you have bad intentions? I always get a couple that raise their hand and we laugh.
Wise guys.
Exactly. And watch out for them. The problem is your good intentions don't matter. What matters is your impact. And there's a gap between our good intentions and our impact. And we as leaders are, more often than not, every time I meet with groups and we talk about leadership, there are so many stories about failed leadership and frustration. Only 12% of teams worldwide are high performing. That's 88% that have opportunities to improve in that area. That's a big number.
Wow.
And so often there's a gap between intentions and and impact. And let me tell you why this is really important.
Please.
I share a model, and I'll put it up on the screen here. The team exists for one purpose only, Lance, and that's to produce results. I don't care if you're a nonprofit. The producing of results is fulfilling the mission. If you're in, I work with universities and med school leadership. I was just doing a team diagnostic for a university president and all their deans to get them to work together better. But if you look at this model, the horizontal axis on the left side is low productivity, on the right side is high productivity. And then you look at the vertical, the up and down, that's positivity, that's the culture, that's the relationship, right? So the productivity is about getting the task done. The vertical line is about the relationship that allows you to maintain the productivity. So look at the bottom right. You see there's low positivity and high productivity. That is results over people. And you get burnout. And so often you see this in organizations where people are like, I just can't take it anymore. And so they leave. Well, many leaders fear the opposite of that, Lance, which is if you look at the top left, it's high positivity, but low productivity. Everyone loves each other. They get along, but they don't challenge each other. There's not accountability. That's not sustainable. The worst is low. You're going to be out of business really, really quickly. And, there's a lot of people are depressed. They're jumping ship. But to get to that top right-hand corner, it takes effort. And it's not about rainbows and unicorns. This is an environment where people are challenging each other, where we make commitments. And when you don't follow through, people will call you out on that. But there's enough trust on the team that it's not, there's resilience for when things go wrong that you can get through it. And there's enough, call it deposits in the emotional bank account, and people feel safe that they can speak up and challenge leadership. If that doesn't happen, leaders can make a lot of mistakes that can cost their organization a lot of money. Yeah. Now, there are times, Lance, where we have to be in that bottom right-hand corner, right? There's end of the month. Sometimes we have project-driven deadlines. We just gotta grind it out, but we can't stay there. Sometimes we gotta relax and celebrate that top left.
Yeah.
But there is one good thing about the bottom left-hand quadrant, and that is if it's painful enough, it will cause us to change what we're doing. That's the only positive of being in low positive, low productive. If it's painful enough that you change what you're doing to start creating results that create sustainability. And that's what we talk about, how to do that. And it's, I do team diagnostics. We identify all the elements of productivity and positivity within a team. That takes a little bit of effort. And then more importantly, it takes ongoing effort to really create that culture that is going to help you find the best people and retain the best people. In order to get the best people, you have to be a place where they want to go. You have to be a place where they're excited to work. And I'm not talking about massage tables and ping pong tables and, beer gardens. I'm talking about a place that helps people to learn, to grow, to develop, that values their input, that gives them opportunities to learn and grow. These are all leadership issues, Lance.
Yes. Boy, you hit on so much value. By the way, for those playing along, listening to the audio version of this, I can certainly, in the show notes, I'll have ways for you to get that information,
that graphic
and the graphic, and we'll get that to you. You mentioned development. So talk a little bit more about development, because I know people, why is ongoing development even important? Because I know there's people that don't pay attention to it. They find an employee, they plug a hole, and that's kind of where it ends for some people, right?
Yeah. So it's a great question, Lance. So that brings up another thing that I talk a lot about, and that is this, I really get frustrated when people only focus on strengths, right? I don't know if you've heard of Strengths Finder. Now find your strengths and line people up with their strengths so that they can love what they do. And if you love what you do, you never have to work a day in your life. First of all, that's absolutely rubbish. That is such a lie. You love what you do, so you put up with the crap that you have to do no matter what you do. And there's always going to be a challenge. And if you love it, you're going to be able to fight through that. So here's the problem. There's this idea that if I just focus on my strengths, do what I'm good at, I'm going to be happy. That's not true. Because here's what happens. If you get a great employee and you match them up with their perfect job, and they get going. And at first it's great. They're new with you, but after a while, boredom sets in. And what happens is they are no longer challenged. Part of the human condition, we are built to learn, to grow, and change. If there is no challenge, if there is no opportunity for development, for learning and growing, people become stagnant. They start wandering and looking over here. Is there another opportunity? Can I grow over here? If you don't give them those opportunities to challenge them, to help them grow and develop and learn, they're going to go somewhere else. Now, I'm not talking about putting people in a position where they fail, where they have too many challenges. You want to give them enough of a challenge that they can push themselves out of their comfort zone. Remember, we used to talk a lot about comfort zones at Rapport, right?
Absolutely.
It's important to get out of that comfort zone from time to time. Why? Because it gives you a sense of accomplishment. When you learn something new, there's this, releasing of endorphins, and it's just a challenge. Yes, from time to time, we need to have things calm and just utilize our strengths, but we need something also to keep our interest. And if you're not challenging your people with new projects, with new growth opportunities, with new responsibilities, they'll become stagnant. I can't get any clearer than that.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. A lot of people say there's no I in team, but you actually teach people, and we mentioned one of the I words earlier, but apparently there is an I in team. So talk about it from your standpoint.
Well, I've already mentioned one. We talk about, good intentions, but it's about your impact. And I, as an individual on my team, can have a big impact on the results of the team. I am an individual on a team. You are an individual on a team. The team is a system made up of individuals, okay? And you take one person off of that team, it will change the entire system. You add one person, it will also change the system. I impact the system, and the system impacts me. So there's a lot of eyes on the team. And I created this title, Lance, because I wanted it to be a little controversial and remember people to remember it, because we've always heard there's no I in team, right? And when I first changed this title, I called one of my clients, an architect firm, actually there in Las Vegas where you are, and the partner, we were talking about this topic. He started laughing. He says, "Hey, we just had this training 2 weeks ago. Let me send you the graphic." And he sent me this graphic that says there is an I in team, and the I is red. And then he zoomed in, and here is this little graphic with the team, and in the A, it's a little red. So it looks like the I is in the team, and it is right in the middle of the A hole.
Right in the middle of the A hole.
The I is in the A hole. No, but obviously I'm making fun of myself here, but the I in team is just that. There's really about 4 I's in team. It's your intentions, it's your impact, it's your individual, it's all of those things. And let me speak to it in this way.
Sure.
I told you that 12% of teams are high performing. And the team exists to produce results. And to sustain that's all about relationships. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But
yeah.
that number says it's not simple. And here's why. One of the reasons why it's so hard to maintain that positive, that positivity for the culture, to create that sustainability, is think about what business leaders do for a living. If again, I'm going to simplify this as much as I can. Basically, they fix problems. They solve problems. They deal with issues all day long. I don't care if you're a manager or leader. If you're not fixing things and solving problems, then you're superfluous. You're not needed.
Right.
And the problem with that, Lance, is it can become a focus. Think about, for example, Las Vegas Metro there in Las Vegas. Do they deal with the best of society?
Unfortunately, not always.
No, they deal with a lot of times, and if you recall at Rapport, we trained a lot of those police officers, and many times they would come into our training. They had trust issues. They had secondary trauma. People in healthcare, what do? They deal with chronic diseases where they have to help people. Also, acute injuries, and many times they get compassion fatigue. Customer service people, what do they deal with? People calling them when they're so excited about their products? No, complaints.
Yes.
People yelling at them all day long. Project managers, what do they deal with? Risk. And this can become a focus. I'll tell you one story. There was an auditor what do auditors do? They look for errors for a living, don't they?
Yeah.
So this one auditor,
doing everything wrong.
Right. So this one auditor was frustrated with his wife. So what did he do? What he knew. So he created a spreadsheet of all of her faults
Oh,
so that he could send that spreadsheet to her, give it to her, and say, here's what you need to work on, honey.
oh.
Very logical, right? Did not have the impact he intended. So the problem is our focus on problems can become a habit, a pattern. How do we create that positivity? We have to take greater responsibility and work on ourselves as an individual on the team for the team to perform its best.
So, Spencer, would you say that if somebody is new to business ownership,
Yeah,
and they own their first business, the franchise organization gives them the blueprint, but the franchise organization, while they might be training their general manager or managers, they're not running the day-to-day business. That's the job of the individual newbie business owner. So is it trust that needs to be developed first, rapport? What specifically is your advice, especially towards the beginning of this process, to be successful in the long run?
yeah, that's a great question. We can never, as business owners, do everything we need to do by ourselves, and you need a team. You need teams in your communities, in your churches, your synagogues, your family, and of course in your business. And so one of the first things that has to happen is you've got to find the right people that, my question for you is trust given or is it earned?
Yeah. Trust certainly should be earned, because I know as an employer in the past, I knew I had to build some sort of rapport where we like each other. We want to be working with each other, some sort of mutual respect, to the point where I want them to be able to do things that I ask and
Yeah,
things
but
that
at
are
some
expected.
point, so your answer is correct, and also it's also has to be given. I mean, think about your kids
Okay.
when they learn to drive. They couldn't earn your trust unless you actually gave them the keys and gave them an opportunity to drive first.
Good point.
Now,
Yeah.
you don't give them, as soon as they learn how to drive, you don't give them your keys and say, hey, head down to Mexico and have a great weekend.
Yeah.
No,
Hey, Spencer, I have to tell you that I used to also call that giving them enough rope to hang themselves.
right, right. But you have to give some trust in the beginning. And so you get to do your due diligence and make sure that you have high integrity people, because that's obviously going to help you develop that trust with your people very, very quickly. And you give them opportunities to build on that and to demonstrate that trust. But it is absolutely your job as a business leader to create those relationships. Let me illustrate for you why. When I first started working for Kelvin, my mentor out of college, we had started a new business that was called International Tourist Entertainment Corporation. So it was brand new. We were a publicly traded company. And part of the process of hiring me, he knew me through church. I had an opportunity to meet this individual through church, but he wanted to really test me out. So he took my wife and I, he paid for my wife and I to fly to Branson, Missouri, where we were going to build our first theater as part of the interview process. Why? He wanted to see how I would show up in the community, how I'd interact with people, how I treated my wife, how she responded to me. He told me I got the job because of my wife. If you remember Zappos, what they used to do, they would bring people into town and take them on the bus. It was the HR person that was actually driving the bus just to see how people interacted with each
Yes.
other.
Yes.
Find opportunities to see how people interact outside of work. Anyway, I got the job. But at one point, I wasn't performing to the level that he needed. He was running 2 publicly traded companies, 2. And so when you have a lieutenant, a captain, whoever she is or he is, they need to be responsible enough to make your job as the business owner easier. And if they don't do that, you don't need them.
Right.
And I remember him first saying that to me, Lance, your job is to make my job easier. I thought that was pompous, but he's right.
Yeah.
My job was to make his job easier by doing great work and making sure that he didn't have to worry about anything I did. Well, he did have to worry at one point, and he sat me down, Lance, and he said, you know what, if you don't make some changes, I'm going to have to make a change, and I'm going to give you 6 months to make these changes. Now, here's why that relationship mattered. a lot of people listen to this might say, well, that if I said that to somebody, they'd probably quit. That's because you don't have a relationship. That's because you haven't invested the time. You see, when Kelvin told that to me, I was devastated. I did not want to let him down. I have a relationship with him as a father figure, as a through my church. To me, I was like, I want to prove to Kelvin that I'm here to stay. Well, after the 6 months, he promoted me. But how is it? Are you able to have conversations with your people? Do you have enough trust with the people on your team that when you have to sit down and have a difficult conversation, they don't go sideways because they know that you care about them?
Yeah.
That's the kind of relationship you need to develop if you're an entrepreneur and you're getting started. You got a great system and process, great brand, all of that's being provided. The missing ingredient that they can't replicate is you and the relationships that you develop on the ground in your business, where the people show up every single day to grind and give their very best, not because they have to, because they want to.
Boy, you just nailed something huge. That I was speaking to a new franchisee, a client of mine that I put in a franchise, and he was surprised. While he's very happy with his home care franchise, non-medical home care, he's talked to a few franchisees that, let's just say, don't have the appropriate traction. They're complaining about their staff and what have you. And I told them it's probably because of him or them in their leadership style that is not working. Because whether you're a full-time owner or a part-time owner, all franchises require somebody to run the actual business day to day, even if it's a manager and the owner is just checking in. But you just nailed the magic formula. You have to have a great relationship with your people, especially if you're going to be what we call a semi-absentee owner. You're not going to necessarily be there 40 hours a week, and you're going to entrust that process to your general manager. But as you know, 100%. Stuff rolls downhill. And if you don't have that relationship with your GM, so boy, you hit on, I mean, we could talk about this for 4 hours now.
Let me just say one more thing about that. I talk to CEOs and business owners all the time and say, oh, could you just help me with this person on my team? They're messing up. They're doing this. I can't get them to do what I need them to do. And I go, is part of the problem that you're part of the problem? And if the business owner or CEO does not recognize that they're always part of the problem, we create our own problems as business leaders. And yet we want to point our fingers at everybody else and blame everybody else. It starts with you.
Yes. I love it. And that's the conversation that I have with people as they're in the selection process. I've had a lot of people say, well, I don't want to pick a bad brand. And I said, I got news for you. None of the brands that we are talking about right now are bad brands. However, the question mark is you. Always. You have never led an organization of your own. Surprise. And you said it earlier. You are it. You are numero uno, which is why this conversation today is so critically important. You have to look in the mirror and understand what you're good at. And let's talk a little bit about that. When we're talking about like job matching and strengths, we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
If a new business owner realizes they're not good at sales, I mean, is that the first step, understanding what you're not good at?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of approaches that you can take. Obviously, you can outsource those things that you're weak at, or you can hire those. I have some great tools where we get very clear about what the behavioral strengths are. If you're looking at different jobs that you're creating, what is the profile of that individual that you need to have? You have to be very careful, because you can't, you can't introduce bias through even a behavioral profile, but you can use it in a way that is non-biased to help you ask the right type of behavior-based questions to get the right people in the right seat. And there's some great tools out there to help you do that. You also have to fish in the right location. I mean, job boards aren't always the best. Monster and Indeed and all those things, you're not always going to get the best people. I'm talking about key people for sure. Yes. And then your frontline people, you've got you've got to be out there looking and seeing great people and inviting them to come work. And then you've got to create a place where they want to come. And you want your people. I'm not just talking about referral programs. I'm talking about a place where people love to work, that they talk about and invite their friends because they want them to be there. But that's a whole nother discussion that we haven't talked that, we don't have time to talk about. But if you're not great at sales, this is I talked about earlier. I went on a rant about just focusing on your strengths. To me, that's a weakness. On my podcast, I had Scott Hamilton, gold medal skater.
Yes.
And he said, because we were talking about this concept, he says, I was number 2 in the world in 1980. He woke up, he was number 5 in 1980. In 1981, he woke up, he was number 2. The number 1 skater had as a strength Scott's weakness. What did he do? He went out and changed his mindset about the weakness that he had and made it a strength.
Yeah.
So much in leadership, sometimes we've got to learn how to develop those. And if we are not willing or able to do it, then we have to outsource. But I believe in working on your weaknesses. That's part of that self-development and growing. Learn how to do sales. And you don't have to be an expert, but you need to know enough that you can make sure that the people who are selling for you are doing their job.
Scott Hamilton getting out of his comfort zone for sure.
Yeah.
To do the triple Lutz or whatever axle.
Well, those were his strengths. The thing that was his weakness was the what he called compulsory figures. Those figure eights, he hated them. He said they hated me.
Yeah,
but that was his weakness.
Spencer, as I looked at your website to dive through all of the courses, things like coaching and mentoring and conflict resolution, critical thinking, body language skills. It's amazing and overwhelming to new business owners if they actually even think about this and do their own quickie assessment of, how do I need help? So for the organizations listening, whether it's a small business or a large business, how do you help we know how you help the large ones. I mean, there's all kinds of workshops you do. They pay you a hefty fee. What about some of the small businesses? How can they access you?
Lots of small businesses. I tell you, one of the first things you do, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Spencer Horn on LinkedIn, or go to my website, altiumleadership.com. That's ALTIUM leadership.
We'll put that in the show notes so you have that.
Yeah, go there, and I'll tell you what I love to do with a leader is do a leadership and communication survey with them. It takes 5 to 10 minutes. And what I do, Lance, is I'll go through that with them, and we dive in, and in an hour, some people say, I feel like you just went through my underwear drawer, right? And I will know what is your strength and where you need to work. And it starts there. And then people are like, oh my gosh, will you do my significant other? Will you do my team members? And it starts small like that. And sometimes it's just a little bit of coaching where we're working. I mean, I do a lot of one-on-one. I have a client right now that has 6 employees. They're a digital marketing firm. He's from California. They're based in Puerto Rico. And I work with a lot of small firms, and I'm coaching the CEO of the company, and I coach one of his right-hand people. So it's just helping them to really run their businesses well. So that's what I do with smaller businesses, is just whatever level of engagement they need and where they're at, what their budget allows, and what they have time and attention for.
Awesome. So final thoughts, final tip for those listening on leadership, team development, anything from the Spencer Horn archives, arsenal, tool belt, whatever you want to call it.
So, this may sound strange. I mean, I've been talking about, productivity and positivity. I'm going to share with you what I call the bathroom principle, because all of you in these franchises, they probably have bathroom facilities, but I believe, I don't know about you, Lance, but when I go places, I have to use public facilities. I like them to be clean, don't you?
Sure, absolutely.
You want to know if an organization is well run, use their bathroom. You want to know if a franchise has a combination of engaged employees. They do the crap that is hard, that is like cleaning the bathrooms, and I use that word on purpose, right? So as a leader, you've got to be willing to create an environment where people, you go to Buc-ee's, outside of Dallas, they created this quick service brand that is
Buc-ee's is amazing. I went to Buc-ee's for the first time last year.
Yeah, and you know what? They have 100 gas pumps, but you go in there, the bathrooms are immaculate. They have full-time attendees in there, and they've created this culture that's all about creating an experience. Yeah. So if your brand is one that interacts with the public, make sure that every interaction is awesome. I mean, I could tell you stories about how I learned that, but I actually show in some of my keynotes, I show pictures of Hall of Fame bathrooms, and I talked about the bathroom principle. So, and last story, I was talking about this to a group of CEOs. I talked to CEO groups all over the country. And one of the executives, Lance, said, if I want to know if a company is good, if they're interviewing me, I always ask to use their restroom. There's a combination of productivity and positivity when the bathrooms are clean. That's my last bit of wisdom.
I love it. Talk. But and I appreciate you being here and all that wisdom. And in all seriousness, when you mentioned it's a lot of retail type restaurant franchises, we know those names because we see them on every street corner in America. But there's a lot of franchises that are home service brands, air conditioning, roofing. And likewise, I would imagine it translates just the same. Is the truck clean? Is the uniform as clean
when they
as
come
possible?
In, do they put their booties on? Do they ask me if just do it? Put on the booties and make sure you respect people's homes. And yes, absolutely, the truck is clean. It's the same thing. All those little details take extra effort that all come from that positive culture.
Yes, I love it. Well, Spencer, you're awesome. Thank you for being here, and great to see you as always, my friend. Time to grab a bowl of soup sometime soon.
Let's do it. Thank you, Lance.
All right.
Thank you very much for listening today. Please like, follow, and subscribe. This is Lance Graulich. Until next time.